What's up, everyone? Aaron Nagler here for PackersNews.com. Late in the day on Monday. I hope everyone had a great weekend. Had a whole lot of Packers news to talk about. Obviously, the last time we spoke, the Packers had put an offer sheet out there for Kyle Fuller of the Chicago Bears. The Bears quickly matched said offer sheet. And since then, not a whole lot of news other than the numbers coming in for Jimmy Graham and Muhammad Wilkerson, both deals basically fitting into the 2018 cap for the price of one Jordy Nelson. That was the cost of doing business in that regard. Obviously, you have to see how it plays out, but Jimmy Graham's deal, pretty reasonable. Muhammad Wilkerson's deal is an absolute steal. And the Packers are sitting with a little over $20 million in cap space heading into the second week of free agency. And everyone's piling in here. How are you, everyone? Tyler, first-round edge rusher. I tend to think that's the way they'll go, but it all depends on how the board falls and who's available at 14 and how their grades line up. What about a solid cornerback? Well, there are still several names out there. I know none of them are exactly setting the world on fire when it comes to Packers fans dreaming of said free agents playing in a Packers G, but there are plenty of guys out there on the street still. Packers have to find a way to get Fitzpatrick or James in the draft. Yeah, I think both of those are going to be a tall order, but you never know, especially now with so much going on at the top, especially the top five, with the trade between the Jets and the Colts. You have to think after the Bills had already traded to get into the top 10, now you got to think the Bills are probably going to try and jump up to number 2. All that jockeying is going to send some defensive talent down to the Packers, and or at least down to the 10-12 range where maybe they can jump up and get somebody. Mary Beth asks, any chance we jump up in the draft? It's possible. It really comes down to Gutekunst and his conviction when it comes to a player. That's what it took when Ted Thompson traded back into the first round back in the day to get Clay Matthews. That was not exactly a name that had been connected to Green Bay leading up to that draft. And, Thompson saw a kid who was really blossoming, who had not played a whole lot there at USC, but he projected that he was going to be a very good player in the defense the Packers were implementing starting that season, and he had the courage of his convictions to do it. Now, is there someone in this class that Gutekunst feels similarly strong about? It's quite possible, but obviously we have no idea who that might be. Does the salary cap compensate for the big salary increases every year? Salary cap increases every year? I'm not quite sure what you're asking there. Could you rephrase the question, possibly? Trade up for Ward? Corey, it's funny. I was just mocking something out there at Fanspeak a little bit earlier this afternoon, and Ward went to Washington at pick 13. How frustrating would that be for Packers fans on draft night? But yeah, if again, it's the same answer. Without knowing what their grades are on any of these prospects, I know we all see their names when we talk. We look at the draft guru stuff, all the online industrial complex, the draft industrial complex, as I like to call it. We all see the same names and we're familiar with them, but at the end of the day, we really have no idea how the NFL guys really feel about these prospects. That's why every year, especially in the first round, there are lots and lots of surprises. What do you think about the Kyle Fuller move? Here's the question I have. What was the intention behind the offer sheet? Was it to actually try to attain the player? Because if it was, I don't think it was very effective, and I don't think they did a very good job. But if the objective was to make the Bears overpay and give Kyle Fuller a bunch of guaranteed money that they weren't planning on, then I guess you'd call it a success. But really, the way it was structured, it's not a crazy contract. It's not prohibitive for them at any point to get out from under it. The dead money, the only real dead money, significant cap hurting dead money would probably be after this season. So I'm really kind of mystified as to what the purpose was. But if we're judging it purely on the idea that the Packers were trying to obtain him as a player, I gotta say that's a big swing and a miss. And, I don't know if that's on Gutekunst. I don't know if that's on Russ Ball. But, if they truly did want to get him on their roster and sign, something outside of, financial guerrilla warfare, so to speak, I don't see what they were trying to accomplish there. Kind of looks like a Patriot move. Yeah, possibly. I can see that. The one thing I keep coming back to when I think about it is something that Mike McCarthy said when I asked about the GPS data that is now available to all 32 teams. Teams had been collecting for the last 2 years their own GPS data of their own players, but now teams have the data available to all 32 teams. They can look at each other's stuff. And when I asked Gutekunst and McCarthy about it, McCarthy mentioned that that's an area we want to get ahead of. We want to get our analytics guys on it. That's an area to compete. So if, the idea is every single area, no matter how big or small, no matter how kind of whatever minutia may be involved, if that is an area to compete, well then getting the Bears to sign a guy for a bunch of guaranteed money that they didn't want to, that's an area to compete. So in that sense, maybe they were successful, but it looks like a bunch of work for not a whole lot of gain. But again, I don't know the intention behind the move. What do you think about Graham's contract? I think it's pretty impressive work there. As far as the only real guaranteed money is the $11 million signing bonus. After that, depending on when they cut him, if they cut him at the end of the year, if they want to get out from under it, they'll either have $7 million worth of dead money or like around $4 million worth of dead money, dependent. But I see Jimmy Graham playing pretty well in this offense, so I don't think that's going to be, that's going to kind of be a moot point. And after that, it's basically pay as you go, which is what the Packers have always tried to do. Outside of Aaron Rodgers deals, they've almost always gone pay as you go. They don't like to, restructure guys and kick the can down the street. And I think with Graham, they're giving him that $11 million up front, and then after that, it's if you're still effective, we're going to keep you around. Oh, Stuart, what do you give these questions? What grade do I give the Packers for the offseason so far? It's incomplete. I know a lot of people are frustrated about the cornerback situation. I've gotten a whole lot of emails, a whole lot of tweets, and I get it, man. I totally get it, especially in regards to the fact that you've watched your secondary and the cornerback spot in particular play really poorly the last 2 years in general, as a whole. And now your new general manager has traded away the cornerback who was playing probably the best football of any of them down the stretch last year. And he hasn't signed any available free agents. You've watched them go off the board rather quickly here in free agency. So I understand the reticence, the anxiety, call it what you will. However, I do have to continue to come back to the idea that it is still extremely early in the new league year. And there are still plenty of avenues open, whether that is free agency, whether it is trading somebody, whether it is picking over the scrap heap, so to speak, when cap casualties come along throughout the offseason. And look no further than the Super Bowl champs. The Eagles didn't have their secondary, their cornerback situation wasn't really settled until August of last season, heading into the, basically camp, even during camp. So it's a long way to go between now and kickoff of week one, and I get it. Like I said, I totally understand how frustrating it is, especially when you're watching all these corners get signed and your team is not participating. The only two names I think I noticed that they have been in on at all have been Rashawn Melvin, who went to Oakland on a one-year deal, and Rashawn Breeland, who was signed by Carolina, but then later failed his physical, is now back out on the street. So maybe they look at Breeland again once he's healthy and able to sign. But in the meantime, like I said, you just got to stay patient. We cannot win the Super Bowl with rookie-filled secondary. Well, who says it's going to be rookie-filled? Who do they play this Sunday? There's a long way to go. Let's see. When you have the 27th ranked cornerback, it's hard to go far. Yeah. True, but that's last year. Let's see what we got here. Navarro Bowman would be a great sign. I don't see, possibly maybe after the draft, but I'd be very surprised if he was signed anytime soon when it comes to Green Bay. Now, maybe they want to look at a veteran like that after the draft if they don't like kind of the makeup of their roster, so to speak. Gutekunst obviously is not Ted Thompson, and maybe he has a different valuation when it comes to the inside linebacker spot. But that's not somebody I think they're going to rush out and give money to. That's why they fired Capers. Yes, Sean, that is a big reason. Can't win the Super Bowl without a top 10 D. Jake, by and large, you are correct. What's Al Harris up to? I like it. I think he's still coaching in Kansas City, or he was last time I checked. Do you think we pick up a veteran wide receiver? I actually doubt it. Now, maybe there's someone out there that gets cut or sits on the market for a while and is a really good bargain and they bring him in. But, obviously they've been using Geronimo Allison for the last 2 years and they brought him back. He knows the offense really well and he can slide right in and play that boundary receiver position that Jordy played last year and so well these last many years. But I gotta think they at least have their eye on people. Obviously, you got young guys like D'Angelo Yancey who could still be a factor. But, as far as, where that production is going to come from, obviously, Jordy fell off the map last year. We all know the story. A big part of that is because of the quarterback situation. But as far as where they're going to get, the production that Jordy would have provided, I think a lot of that's going to go to Jimmy Graham. And I know last year he really fell off the map yards per catch wise. I know in general his time in Seattle was less than inspiring when you're talking about a downfield threat. He just wasn't utilized that way. It was kind of a lot of the times it was really mystifying what Seattle was doing with him, and especially with the number of times they lined him up in line with as a true classic tight end. I think you're going to see him lined up outside way more than you ever did in Seattle. Big time callback to his time in New Orleans. Either in the slot or on the perimeter, I think you're going to see him basically as a glorified wide receiver. And I think he's going to do a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes to making up what they lost production-wise when Jordy was sent packing. No Eric Reed due to political stuff. He would be good and cheap. Well, I don't know about cheap. I think he will... he'll wait and find a place that is ready to pay for his services, or he'll simply not play. Now, that said, I think he could help, but I don't see the Packers going that route. I don't see them allocating assets, free agent dollars there, especially when they, are moving on from Morgan Burnett, and they drafted Josh Jones specifically because they knew they would need a safety when Morgan Burnett moved on. And I'm not so sure they've completely closed the door on Morgan Burnett. So, while Eric Reed, like I said, I think could help, I just think that, I'd be surprised if they went that route. And not because of the political stuff. Although, clearly the Packers had a dire need at quarterback and they didn't call Colin Kaepernick. So, maybe Eric Reed's in the same boat. Am I the only one who thinks Fumagalli isn't that great of a player? Well, I think it's all relative, I think clearly you're going to hear a lot about him because you're a Packers fan, and that's a Wisconsin connection, and he's a Wisconsin player. I don't think anybody's thinking of him in terms of he's going to get selected on day 1 or even day 2. I think he's going to be selected day 3, but I think he's going to have a really solid pro career. I don't think he's going to turn into the next Jason Witten or anything, but I do think he's going to be a good pro, and a lot of his success in the NFL, I think, is going to come down to where he ends up, what kind of scheme he's in, what kind of coaches he has, and how he's utilized. But I think he's a good football player. I think a lot of it will depend on what his opportunities are once he gets drafted. Cobb gone to make more room for the cap? I don't see it. People are already asking about bringing in veteran wide receivers. So you're going to get cut Cobb to do what? Go get another wide receiver who doesn't know the offense. So now you've lost 2 guys who know the offense like the back of their hands, and you're just going to hand it over to Geronimo Allison and a free agent and Jimmy Graham, who's learning the offense. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Please tell me that the Montgomery running back experiment is over. Well, I don't know if it's over. I think they'll use him there. I think they'll use him at wide receiver. I think they'll use him all over. I've said it all offseason. I think he's a versatile weapon. And you can't just sit there and say the experiment was a failure. Clearly, he was used way too much in a role that was probably not suited for him early on last year. But the year before, he was averaging 5.6 yards per carry. And that was in a complementary role. And obviously they had to go there because he was thrust into the role because of injuries. But he can be effective. I just don't think he's a lead back. I think he's much better suited to be a third down guy who Rodgers can use as a chess piece to get the defense to declare their coverage and kind of use him either out of the backfield or split him wide out of the backfield to dictate what the defense has to do, showing their coverage-wise. But, yeah, I don't think the experiment needs to be over or declared a failure. I think it's just ongoing and evolving. I like Nick Nelson, cornerback in the 2nd round. I've been watching Nelson a little bit more the last week or so, just since it became apparent that the Packers were going to be looking at the draft hard when it comes to corner. My one issue with his game is how grabby he is. He grabs a lot, and it shows up obviously with the number of penalties he's gotten as a collegiate player, but that's going to get him in a lot of trouble in the NFL. If he can just kind of get his hands under control, I think he can be a pretty good corner in the league, but that's a bad habit he needs to break. I've heard the Green Bay route tree isn't that complex. Is that true? Whew, that's a complicated answer. I'm not sure if you're talking about the route tree, so to speak. Is the NFL route tree is it's numerical. Every number coincides with the route, and there's a unit that the route tree in and of itself is universal. What you may be talking about there is how the Packers offense uses what are called isolation routes. They use a lot of them, where guys you see often McCarthy will have static wide receivers spread across the line of scrimmage, 2, 3, 4 wide outs, even 5 back in the day. And those guys will have to win on their own, where they have to, let's say somebody's running a post and another guy's running a curl, and another guy's running maybe a deep in. Each one of those in and of themselves are dependent on the wide receiver. And now sometimes it's what they're reading coverage-wise. Like if they see cover 2, what they're mandated to run is different than if they have man coverage. I could talk a long time about this, so I'll try and button it up. But it's not that the route tree is simplified in Green Bay. It's they are asked to win on their own a lot. Where if there's man coverage, they've got to create separation on their own. And what has happened a lot of times over the kind of tenure of McCarthy and Rodgers working together is a lot of those isolation routes, teams just play a lot of 2-man, which is 2 deep safeties with man coverage underneath. And it makes it really hard because, these guys are running 10, 15-yard routes, like deeper routes. They don't use a lot of shallow stuff. They don't use rubs. They don't use crossers. They don't use a lot of bunches. They use a little bit, but not a lot. And so they're kind of running into the coverage because they've already got a man on them, and then they're running into the 2 deep safeties. Now, all of that said, McCarthy does use crossers. He does use rub routes. He does use bunches. He just doesn't use them nearly as much as a lot of other NFL teams do. And he's also contending with a quarterback who, when he does do that stuff, will often turn down some of that easy stuff underneath. Funny, I was just watching Week 1 again against Seattle, where Rodgers has, I think it was one of the tight ends, it's either Bennett or Kendricks, wide open over the middle, underneath. I'm talking screaming wide open. And he turns it down, he doesn't throw it, and he's looking deep, and he holds the ball for almost 7 seconds, and it ends up a sack. Now, the offensive line gets yelled at, Packer fans get frustrated, etc. Well, you had the crosser underneath. All you had to do was hit the crosser. The shallow crosser. One of those routes that is there specifically to make it easy for him. But, the Rodgers has this tendency to hold the ball and look for the deep shot or look for the big play. And that's fine. That's what's made him great. It's what's won him 2 MVPs. That's his game. So when you hear the Packer route tree is simplistic, that is, A, just kind of factually not true. And B, there's a lot of levels and a lot of layers there. Like I said, I could talk for a real long time. Maybe someday I'll do a tweet up in a bar somewhere in Green Bay and we can chat. Let's see, what else we got here? What happened to the Bears DB corner is Kyle Fuller. I talked about it at the top of the video. The Packers signed him to an offer sheet and the Bears matched it pretty much 2.5 hours later. So you can forget about all that. Someone asked, what about EJ Gaines? I thought he had a good year last year. I think his tape is good. His one issue, as far as when you're looking at it from the Packers' perspective, he comes in underneath Ron Wolf's physical threshold for height. Just barely, but he does. Now, I can't say that they're sitting there taking him off the board, so to speak, the free agent board, because of that. But the fact that he hasn't been signed and the Packers haven't looked at him or talked to his people or anything suggests that, they're not interested because of that measurement. Now, that's just guesswork on my part, because obviously we're not privy to their thinking and they don't exactly broadcast it, but as near as I can tell, that would be a reason that they'd be shying away from that kind of signing. How long have you been doing this for, Peter? Are you talking about the video or covering the Packers? Because they both feel like a long time. I don't know. I've been writing about the Packers for about a decade. Who will worry O-lines more, Wilkerson, Daniels, or Clark? Whew, that's a good question. Well, I think until Wilkerson shows that he's back to at least looking like he's rounding into old school form, I don't think he's going to be the worry. And I think while Daniels is a problem, I really think it's going to be Kenny Clark. He took a big step last year. He already had looked good his rookie year. Last year he was really coming into his own. I think he's ready to become a star in 2018. I really do. I got a Brewers question. Nice. You don't want to ask me Brewers questions. I have no idea. I just want to watch ball. Will the Packers go after Breeland now? Isaac, it's a possibility. I know my buddy Rob Demovsky over there at ESPN had reported that they were interested. I don't know if they had talked contract or anything like that, or they even had a meeting, but I do know that he reported there was interest there. And now that he's failed that physical, he'll be off kind of the market for a little bit as he heals up. But when he gets back in, you saw Carolina made a signing. They actually brought back Ladarius Gunter. You guys may remember him. And I think they brought in someone else as well. So they're probably out of the Breeland market. So maybe. I know the Colts had been interested as well prior to the signing in Carolina, so they may have competition for his services. But I absolutely think if there was interest there before, and he's still there in, say, a month or so, yeah, I would suspect the Packers would be in on that. Somebody asked about Mo Claiborne. He re-signed with the New York Jets, so take him off your lists. Hello from Sweden. Well, hello. What's up, Sweden? How are you? How does Pipkins compare to Shields coming out? Not as fast, but nobody is. Although he is fast. I just don't think he's as fast as Shields. My thing with Pipkins is he gets... When I remember Shields' rookie year, his rookie camp, he made a play a day that made you go, oh, whoa, what was that? And obviously, as an undrafted guy, that's what you want. With Pipkins, I never saw plays that really kind of jumped out at you in that regard, but he was always on his guy. Like when they did press man coverage drills or even scrimmage stuff, team stuff in camp, he was always on his guy. Always, right there. Now, obviously, you get into games and there are adjustments and checks of the line, etc. He got turned around a few times. He got lost sometimes. Obviously, that's going to happen. Young guy, first kind of real game action. But I tell you what, I like his game. I think he's got a lot of promise. I'm not ready to say he can play at the level Sam Shields was playing at in his prime, but I think they have, I think they've got a potential player there, definitely. Think we get House back? Well, I tell you what, the longer he sits out there and the Packers don't make any moves, yeah, you got to think that's a possibility. Maybe they wait till after the draft, but I got to think he's on the short list. Reggie Gilbert, big step up this year. Will they give him a chance? Will they give him an opportunity? He sure played like he had his hair on fire those last 2 weeks when he finally got the chance to play and brought up from the practice squad. I've been very vocal about it. I think it was a pretty big mistake keeping him on the practice squad all year in favor of Kyler Fackrell. Hopefully they give him a realistic shot in camp this season because, what he did those last 2 weeks of the year is really promising. Joe Witt was high on Herb Waters, wasn't he? Yes, John, he very much was. There was that day, it's kind of etched in my mind now, that press conference where he talked about Herb Waters, and he was like, I was putting on everybody, and he was covering everybody. And he was very adamant about it. And then he got hurt. But now he's back, and we'll see. I'm really interested to see him in camp. If, he's obviously makes it through the spring and is there in the summer when they put the pads on and let him go watch him compete, because that's something we haven't gotten to see. Everything we've heard about, Herb Waters looking good at corner, we've heard from Joe Witt. I've yet to see it on the field. We saw it just ever so slightly early last year, but then he got hurt. Does Aaron Rodgers re-sign with Green Bay? John, yeah, it'll happen. Probably, I would say late in the summer. Maybe before. You never know. It all depends on if he wants to wait on Matt Ryan signing his deal, because Ryan's going into the last year of his deal. So the Falcons will re-up with him. So that's kind of the one last domino as far as quarterback contracts, that if Rodgers wanted to wait, that's probably what he waits for. Why hasn't Jeff Janis been given a chance? Jeff Janis has been given a million chances at wide receiver. This is what I never understand about people saying, like, he had that huge game down in Arizona in the playoffs. You'll never be able to take that away from him. But then that next summer, he came back, and it was going to be the summer of Janis. He came into camp, and he looked completely lost and as bad at wide receiver as he had been prior to the big day down there in Arizona. And then he broke his arm, and then he was gone for a while, and then he came back. And every time he's given an opportunity from scrimmage, he's just never in sync, never where he's supposed to be, runs bad routes. It's great that he can go deep and get behind guys fast every once in a while and make a big play, but you got to be able to do more than that. Especially when you're given the chance. Was it the Oakland game? No. It was the Colts game. That game where he got behind everybody, wide open, and the ball bounces off his face mask. Come on, man. He's been given every chance. He's a beast on special teams. You are right about that, Matthew, and that may be what gets him back to Green Bay. Obviously, he's a free agent right now. Maybe the Packers bring him back and make him their new Jared Bush, a guy who is their special teams ace, who, is only playing from scrimmage in case of emergency, injury, what have you. But I don't see him, getting much of a chance at wide receiver going forward. What do you think of Jagger Alexander? I love his game. Another short corner, though. I doubt he's on the Packers' radar. But, yeah, I love him. It depends. It's funny, too, because talking to people in Indianapolis, scouts either love him and think he's a first-round pick, or really pick apart his game and think, late day two guy. That's why they get paid the big bucks. Myself, I see a guy who's all over the field. Clearly, he's got games where he got picked on a little bit, but for the most part, I really like him. Any news on David Bakhtiari? He just got paid a bonus 2 days ago, I think it was, like a $5 or $6 million roster bonus. So he's not going anywhere. Bring back Aberdaris. There you go, James. All right, everybody. I'm gonna jump. Thank you so much for all the questions. I'm sorry if I couldn't get to yours. They do fly by really fast. I can't believe how many people are here when there's no news to talk about. But I'll be back tomorrow, or maybe later tonight if any news breaks. In the meantime, make sure you're checking PackersNews.com for all the latest. We'll have it each and every tiny detail of anything going on with the Packers. It'll be there for you. PackersNews.com. Check it out. Thanks a lot, everyone. Have a good night.